What's up, everyone? So today's a little different, and I apologize for the voice. I'm a little bit under the weather today. But I got some questions about my journey and how I got to where I am and what drives me to continue to share science and training stuff and all, why the heck does it excite me? And so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk about that because it's kind of it's not a long story, I guess, but it does have some significance to it. So going back to high school, right? I was a high school basketball player who wanted to play Division I. My goal was always to be in March Madness. Now that, ironically, March Madness starts today, and that was a goal of mine. And I worked really hard. I didn't know what I was doing at all. I wasn't lacking effort, but I certainly put forth the best foot possible, trying to become the best basketball player. Now, I didn't really care about school, and I didn't do much school-related efforts. Yes, I was an okay student, but certainly wasn't anything of interest. So I went to go play then Division III basketball, and unfortunately, I didn't play Division I because I was always accused of being, not the best athlete. There's probably a lot of other factors beyond just being not the best athlete holding me back, but that was probably the major one. I went and played Division III basketball at Coe College, where I got 2 degrees, one in strength conditioning and one in athletic training. So it was a lucky opportunity because I was able to educate myself while playing basketball. But again, schooling wasn't something that was a priority. It was always basketball. I wanted to play in Europe. I wanted to continue my passion for the sport. And then, life came knocking, and my season was over. My career was over. But I had to figure out what I was going to do. And all I knew is I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I kind of liked sports science, or at least the idea of it. So I wanted to go to Iowa State and, pursue a master's degree in exercise physiology. In the meantime, over the previous summers, though, during college, I was forced to do some internships, and I worked with some amazing people. I worked with Dr. Don Chu, who was the guy who brought over plyometrics to the U.S., one of the founding interpreters and practitioners for it. And again, wonderfully lucky opportunity, but that only came up because I was turned down twice from the same internship that at a sports science facility that I tried applying to, and they never let me join. I did everything but beg to be an intern there, and I got denied. So I had this wonderful opportunity, and Don helped me a ton in my growth, but at the time I really didn't understand the significance of it. So fast forward again to where I am now, my senior year, and I go on to an internship at University of Iowa, and then from that period, which is in between my graduation, I get started with Iowa State. And at Iowa State, I luckily got connected with the strength coach there as I was doing my master's degree. I helped out, and I began to dive into the science. And this is where really the whole passion and excitement started for me, because I was still pretty bitter about my whole playing career and how things didn't turn out and how I wish they would have. I think every athlete probably feels that to an extent. For some reason, I felt like mine was pretty strong. I still hold some of that resentment to this day, to be honest. So I always thought, man, it wasn't, how can this be my fault? I tried so hard. And physically, I worked out, I lifted, I read magazines, do what you gotta do when you're that age. Growing up, I didn't have Instagram to look at information. I didn't understand what research was, and I wasn't scholastically inclined. So there was a lot of bro science. And so I get to my master's degree, and part of that master's learning is you have a lot of autonomy. You learn to learn. You have to challenge yourself. And there were some books and some discussions that came up, and I made my Strong by Science Instagram page during this time because I was learning some stuff, and I felt passionate about it. And I wanted to write about it, but I didn't have a blog or a website, so I just made an Instagram page and started posting about it. Now, what really happened was then, granted, that kind of grew and took on its own form, which was never intended. I made it anonymously, actually, the first time I made it, because I wanted it to be about the science and what I was learning. But during that time at Iowa State, I was able to dive into a bunch of research that I never knew even existed. So they were these, not catacombs, that's a bad word to use, but these certain areas in the library that were dusty and dedicated to specific areas that were not really much indulged. And one of those was the sports science area. And as a grad student, I had the ability to check out as many books as I wanted. And so I checked out, I think, 20 books. And I just read every single day because, a little bit of a rewind here, I was always embarrassed at some of my internships as how little I felt like I knew. I was always very prepared in basketball and sports I played, and I like to have some understanding of what I'm doing, and I felt so embarrassed as to what I didn't know, especially thinking that I knew something because I just got 2 degrees in it. But I really didn't know much at all. And so I went and got these books, and every night I read. And I said, well, I can't have the same opportunities as everyone else. I'm not a GA, I'm not a strength coach, I'm a master's student, but I can read, and that's the one thing I can control. And in doing that, I kind of took on the scientific approach first before the application because that's what my only availability was. And what I learned was the areas in which science was coming from, especially in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, were these countries that dedicated more resources than the US has to understanding how to perform, the science of performance, and the integrated physiology of it all. So we see in the US quite a bit like exercises, and we see training methods, but we don't have integrated theory. And that is what came up in these books, was the integrated theory of strength conditioning. I found that amazing. And what happened was I started to take some of these principles and apply it to my own training. I got more athletic. I started jumping higher. I got stronger. And I kind of thought to myself, well, I spent all these years lifting, and over about a 1-year period, I made more progress lifting than I had the previous 5 years. And so something I'm doing more right now, but I could have done better, I guess, in the past. And so I always thought about, man, what it would have been like to tell my younger self all this stuff. And that opened the door, and after graduation of my grad school, I went and worked as an applied sports scientist and a director of sports science at a private facility. But that's not important because it's the experiences that we got from those. I worked with a great mentor during that time, Chase Phelps, and he's at Stanford and was at Stanford. And there we had the opportunity to explore the applications of technology and integrate it into performance even at a greater extent. And all that, again, was very eye-opening. In the back of my mind, I'd always thought, like, man, what if I could have done something like this for myself? And now we fast forward, and here I am now, independent on my own, moved out in the Midwest, and I've continued that passion to continue to learn. But as I learn, I keep learning that there's so much more to learn. I learned that there are ways that the intricacies of performance and the science of performance is so much more detailed than what we give it credit for. An easy example would be explain variance. So how can we actually explain what makes a good athlete and what's a great athlete, and what are the differentiating factors? And the fact of the matter is, we don't 100% know, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. If we 100% knew, they'd be a very easy framework to follow. And so in that, it kind of as if this golden, this treasure chest, the answers haven't been solved yet. And because of the allure to solve that answer, I think that's an exciting discovery frontier that I see it. Now once was like an education that, I didn't really like education or learning. It was a burden for me, learning and trying to take courses in college. I never looked at it through a discovery lens. Education is something that I could use and leverage, not to just better myself, but to unlock and understand new concepts that were not talked about before. And that's led me down the path to where I am today, is to where now I have basically a sports science lab in my basement, and I have the ability to test a lot of stuff. And ironically, you can do a lot of that testing on yourself. And so at the moment in time, with making these video series and me trying to be the best athlete I possibly can, I'm at the age of 28 right now, and I'm like, I'm technically still very physically in my prime. Let's see if I can really make myself extremely athletic. The unfortunate situation with the pandemic that we're currently in, limited the amount of people you could take in person. And so instead of saying, no, that's a downside, how can I use this as an opportunity? And I have a certain break period right now before another athlete comes in, when things begin to open a little bit more up, that I can really push myself physically to not just do it for the sake of doing it, but then to learn from it, to have educated justifications behind what I'm doing, to really try and unravel the intricacies of human performance in sports science. I have a notebook full of notes. I have force plate data. I kind of have all these self-studies that I've done myself, and theories and insights that I've been collecting along this way to help formulate the best opportunities to help my athletes. And so while I look at it, yes, it's for me at the time right now, and I want to become the best athlete I possibly can. It's more of an experiment and discovery process than anything. So while people say, well, how do I get to what you're doing, Max? How do I get to be educated in this field, and how do I get to learn and whatever? You can learn a lot just from yourself. You can learn a lot from reading and applying, and not everyone's application means are equal, right? Not everyone has a team to train, not everyone has a group of athletes to train, but for the most part, everyone can train themselves. And so understanding the theory and then understanding I can apply that theory to myself allows you to then begin a framework from which we can enrich our inputs. So I'm not just working out, but every input I have is a training method, modality, is a theoretical application. And those inputs become like investments, and they compound, and you begin to learn more and more. And then you discover areas that you're lacking in, that you wish you knew more about. Like, I'm kind of sick right now, probably from overtraining. And as opposed to just saying I'm sick, I can take that theory and be like, look, I'm sick because I was trying to lose a little bit of weight while increasing my volume, which reducing my current adaptive reserves. If I had more carbohydrates when I was training, I had a higher caloric intake, I could have handled a higher volume without jeopardizing my immune system. Now, jeopardized immune system leaves you more vulnerable to certain kind of infections and catching a cold. So maybe that is a reason why my performance, right now is lacking because of the fatigue, but it's also maybe a warning sign of neuroendocrine overload or demands on the nervous system itself, and ways that we could avoid that in the future. So when I have my athlete coming in and I've got to make aggressive strides to get them better, making sure we plan off days is probably a good idea, but also understanding what we can monitor along this. I would have loved to monitor my sleep a little better, my HRV, would have loved to monitor a lot of other things. So that's kind of the summary of it all, not to go on a rant on this specific topic. But my journey isn't a straightforward one. And so I made this YouTube page now because I wanted to excite people. I really wanted people to want to learn more, be thoughtful about it, because despite what you think you know, you don't know it. That's just kind of the fact of the matter, is we don't have answers. We have some ideas. You can have some hypotheses. You can have some theories, and you can have some intuitions, but no one knows exactly what's going on in regards to the perfect plan, perfect performance, whatever. But the funny thing is, there is a perfect plan. It does exist for an individual. And it's kind of like the forever search and journey to understand what information we need to know in order to devise the perfect plan. So I guess that's my summary here for today. I don't want to keep it too long. And we'll dive into different aspects of some things in the future. But again, I just want to share my journey, my kind of honest answers about some stuff. And then, hopefully you guys keep tuning in and, enjoy these kind of talks and discussions. And we can keep this page growing. So if you guys like, subscribe, follow along, comment, whatever the heck. And I appreciate y'all listening as always.